Hello everybody, we are here for Season 2 of the Battle Hub Draft League, and we are here for the Week 1 breakdown. I'm Tracy Guard, your host, joined by my co-host, Del Monte Blaze the Fox. Foxy, what are we looking at here, bud? Week 1 was absolutely insane, brother. We've got some notable Week 1 rematches, such as Beardo versus Raymond. We got Pokemaster versus Scorpion. We've got some never-before-seen matches like the notorious HIM, aka him versus Emerald Miner. We've got newcomers like Almond versus none other than Just Weavile himself. Shoutouts to the Battle Hub Discord indeed. Let's get started here with our first game, Captain Beanard versus Arcaniner, who previously battled head-to-head in Week 4 of Season 1. Let's take a look at team preview.
Right off the bat, we got a strong squad by Arcaniner. Screens plus powerful physical attackers like Haxorus and Great Tusk, backed up by fast cleaners like Jolteon and Talonflame. Yes, and Arcaniner also has two of his Terra Captains compared to Beanard, one of which being Kilowattrel. He's got the Banded Palafin backed up by support from Glamora and Goodra, along with plenty of other strong attackers. First, Beanard leads off with the Palafin to get the hero form activated. Arcaniner makes a smart play leading Jolteon, as it has few switch-ins to its potential Bolt Beam coverage if it chooses to Terra. Beanard makes the safe play of switching Goodra in versus Arcaniner's Volt Switch out, and reveals its Life Orb as he brings out Grimmsnarl to get the screens up. Beanard knows he can't do much in this situation. He's got to go out and Glamora and get the super effective damage up, get some rocks up on this thing, as well as stall out a couple of turns of screen. Arcaniner isn't going to take this line down, though. He goes hard out into Great Tusk to be able to spin, as there's no spin blockers on Beanard's side. As the captain actually goes out into Ogerpon to potentially get an SD up or a Trailblaze on something. Indeed, we do see a Trailblaze on the Great Tusk, anticipating a rapid spin, which keeps the Ogerpon ahead, but the following turn, Great Tusk gets their own rocks up. Yes, and unfortunately, Beanard, those screens are going to prevent the Ogerpon from doing any real damage, as the Great Tusk brings the Ogerpon all the way down to 13 HP from 1 EQ. Beanard hopes to get a crit on the next turn, but fails, as Great Tusk goes for a second rapid spin, putting it at +2, still behind screens. A very scary situation for Beanard. His only option is to use his priority moves in order to stop this thing. Thankfully, the Banded Palafin is ready to go. Beanard makes a risky play of anticipating his opponent to switch, which isn't entirely out of the realm of possibility, because if Arcaniner goes Haxorus on a Jet Punch, it gives them a free opportunity to DD here. That might be true, but with Great Tusk being so low already, Arcaniner might have to go for a Gambit themselves and sack it off in case Beanard overpredicts, and that's exactly what happens here, as Great Tusk stays in and goes to the close combat, landing a critical hit. It's not the first time a crit has come through at a bad time, and it won't be the last. We're not sure about the exact set of this Great Tusk, but a 252 attack is about 60 to 70 normally, though they could have been Adamant or Black Belt to increase the damage. Either way, outside of a crit, Palafin would never die to CC there. It is very unfortunate, but that is the game we choose to play, and right now Beanard still has to beat this Great Tusk. Thankfully, he still has another priority mon in Hariyama, who manages to take it out with a fake out into a Bullet Punch. This does invite in the Talonflame, but thankfully Beanard has a great switch into Glamora, who's able to get up 2 layers of T-Spikes after being hit by a dual Wing Beat. It's a great opportunity to get those rocks back up, as Arcaniner's spinner is finally gone, though those T-Spikes won't affect Empoleon or Talonflame. Jolteon comes back in and does manage to get Glamora down to the red with a Volt Switch, although it's getting pretty chipped by Life Orb, Poison, and rocks the next time it comes in. Talonflame comes down in the Earth Power, but all it's going to do is U-turn out and then sack off the Jolteon. We see why he's doing that, though. He's trying to get his Grimmsnarl in safely to be able to set up a screen in front of Glamora to give him the opportunity to set up the endgame. As Glamora takes out the Grimmsnarl with a Sludge Wave, Arcaniner knows he can get his Empoleon in to avoid T-Spikes, and agility up on Glamora, baiting the Earth Power to activate its weakness policy. That's right, these are the sets we love to see in draft, essentially a Shell Smash Empoleon behind a light screen. At this point, Beanard has to do his best to stall out the screens again. He fakes out with Hariyama, then goes AV Goodra on the Surf to try and do as much damage as possible with Thunderbolt. But Goodra manages to live on 1 HP, and our calc showed this was most likely a modest Empoleon, which can do 96 to 114 points of damage. We can't know the exact EV spread on Beanard's Goodra, but most likely this was a very high roll on Ice Beam. Goodra did what it had to do though. Now it's just Hariyama again, as it is able to fake out the Empoleon, invites in the Talonflame, which is 1 point faster than Kilowattrel. So all Arcaniner has to do is land a dual wing beat, and even if Beanard goes Kilo, you just Flare Blitz right after. Arcaniner actually reveals the Terra Flying on the Talonflame. Imagine if you could Terra Fly with a Gale Wings in Gen 6. This mon will be insane with Swords Dance or even Banded sets. This does manage to remove the Kilowattrel, but you do leave yourself neutral to Bullet Punch in this form, and seeing that Arcaniner choose to preserve Differential, he goes out in a Haxorus on the fake out from Hariyama. Beanard knows Bullet Punch won't do enough to kill, so he decides to go for a close combat on a potential DD, or in case it lives an attack by a miracle. But Arcaniner goes for the Scale Shot, risking a miss, but does manage to connect with 4, likely a loaded dice set, but we can't tell, and that is game 1. Great game by both sides. The crit was very unfortunate, but this is only the beginning, folks. Let's get into game 2 with the best versus a Praetor. 2 returning coaches that didn't meet in Season 1. This should make for an epic clash. We have a Praetor bringing 3 Bootsmons right off the bat, choosing to leave his hazard removal at home. It's funny because he's bringing webs, and usually that's what you bring to counteract it, but it does make sense with the best having a Gliscor and a Fortress to get up a lot of different hazards. They're going to want to just not have to worry about that. The lead matchup sees Ceruledge versus a Fortress, which seems fine for a Praetor, except it's not a Fortress, it's the signature Hisuian Zoroark. Hisuian Zoroark was a huge player for the best in Season 1, confusing its opponents and continuing the streak, which is able to take up an easy KO on a Praetor turn 1. A Praetor then goes out into Ursaluna, expecting to live any hit from the Zoroark, and goes for the Vacuum Wave, which can hit the Zoroark with its Mind's Eye. But the Zoroark retaliates with a Grass Knot, bringing the Ursaluna down to 4 HP. We are 2 turns in, and 1/3 of the Praetor's team is nearly gone. The best decides to save Zoroark for later, and brings in the Gliscor on the Thunderwave. Smart play, because you want to get that poison activated on Gliscor for later. Praetor decides to go for the Blood Moon to punish if Gliscor gets greedy, but the best actually shows his hand a little bit here with a Facade, giving a Praetor a bit more information on this thing. Praetor decides to continue with his plan and goes Vikavolt to get up the webs to take another Facade from Gliscor. Then Baton passes out to get in the Ninetales, a very nice tech from Praetor, as Gliscor gets up a Spike. This will be a great time to get up a Veil if you were running it. Ninetales tries to get a Freeze Draft on a greedy Gliscor, but the best is having none of that and goes safely out into the Fortress to Rapid Spin away the webs. Praetor actually gets a bit on the lucky side here, flinching on the second Dark Pulse. Then the leftovers save the Fortress from being knocked out. It actually dodges the Thunder Wave from the Fortress. Ninetales has a very close bond with a Praetor, it would seem. It does not want him to be sad. After the Fortress is knocked out, the Delphox comes in and actually reveals the Terra Fairy to resist the Dark Pulse. Probably not what the best was expecting to use it on, but it ends up working out as Delphox knocks out the Ninetales. Praetor's going to have to pull it all on black here, as he sends out the Terra Fire Phalanx to no retreat. The best sacks off their Gliscor to Terra Blast Fire, except it's not a Gliscor, it's a Zoroark. You can already tell based on that HP alone. The best sends out the Tauros, expecting it to neutralize this thing's attack, but a Praetor reveals the Defiant and boosts its attack back to +2, then lives an Aqua Jet, bringing it +3 with the Lychee Berry to knock out the Bull with Zen Headbutt connecting. You know, Delmont, I wonder how much more HP this Phalanx would have had if a Praetor would have brought Veil. I know a Praetor was not going for it, but you gotta wonder, as now Sneasler comes in and is able to go for the Scarf Dire Claw to take him out. You really could have used those webs there as well, as he was actually going to try to get them up again with Vikavolt, as the Gliscor comes in expecting an electric move. 2 quick Facades manage to take out the Vikavolt, however, and without a strong Aqua Cutter or Razor Shell, this Samurott is not going to be able to take down this Gliscor. Yes, Gliscor going for the EQ instead of the Facade to take advantage of the stab, doing just a little bit more than Facade would have done, and that is going to be a 3-0 win for the best. Alright, our third game is Brandon versus Stefan, another rematch from Week 5 of Season 1. At Team Preview, Brandon is bringing a very scary offensive team with the Cress as its defensive backbone, with Stefan bringing more of a balanced team with 2 Assault Vest mons. At the lead matchup, we see Avalug versus Noivern, which might have allowed Brandon to fire off a powerful special attack on the Avalug. Thankfully for Stefan, he changed his Terra captain to be Avalug before the cutoff for week 1 and reveals Terra Fairy to Brandon, which allows Stefan to Oko the Noivern with an Ice Fang. Brandon tries to scare Stefan out with a threatening Iron Head, but Stefan sees through his bluff and goes for a big bad body press on the Bisharp, almost taking it out. Yeah, without any defense investment on that, Iron Head was doing about 42 to 51% to Avalug. Stefan knew what they were doing, but now he's inclined to switch in his regen Alola Malola, which can take a few hits from Bisharp and then easily finish off with a flip turn to get the regen. Stefan is looking great here, up 2 mons, but he kind of stalled out his momentum out here, bring in the Avalug, as this basically allows the Cresselia to come in for free and start Calm Minding. Yeah, as soon as you saw that first Calm Mind, danger, red alert should have been going off. Although he's faster after the Rapid Spin, this Crest continues to set up to Calm Mind at +3, then go for the Moonlight, and stored power is easily going to be able to knock out this Avalug. At this point, Stefan goes Rillaboom to get some U-turn chip, but Brandon actually reveals the Terra Electric, meaning that this Pokemon effectively has no weakness with the Levitate. Things are looking dire here as the commissioners are freaking out, questioning why this Mon was allowed to Terra. And Stefan sends out the Okidogi, which gets annihilated by this Crest stored power. You can go back out into Rillaboom to do as much damage as you can with Abandoned Grassy Glide, but after that nerf, it just isn't as strong as it used to be, and it misses out on the KO, allowing Crest to Moonlight to stay healthy. Good play on Brandon's part. Fawn decides to go into AV Alola here to bait a stored power and a Magic Coat, but Brandon isn't having it. He knows Alola can't touch him, and instead decides to Moonlight to stay healthy for Roaring Moon and Lucario. And now that he's seen Magicoat, he can choose to Calm Mind all the way to +6 to guarantee knockout this Alola. All that Stefan can hope for at this point is a freeze with Ice Beam, but Cress is having none of it, and eventually knocks out the Alola with the stored power. Now Stefan has no choice but to try to flinch this thing down with Lucario to weaken it for Roaring Moon, but he can't even do as much with a Meteor Mash now that it's electric type and resist, and the Cress is immune to Earthquake. Stored Power claims another KO here as Stefan brings out his Roaring Moon to Dragon Dance, praying Brandon either chokes or doesn't have Moon Blast. Of course, he has to for the Roaring Moon, and sure enough, it takes it out, and that is the game. Yes, Cress was actually a transaction Pokemon for Brandon's team, as if it wasn't already powerful enough. This Cress has proved to be one of the scariest threats so far. It was actually 11 points in Season 1. I'm not sure who decided to make this thing 10 points to get it under the threshold for Terra, but I guarantee you they are sweating bullets right now. Game 4 coming up, another big rematch this time between Pokemaster and Scorpion, who also played each other in Week 1 of Season 1. So let's see if history repeats itself here. At Team Preview, we can already tell Scorpion is not playing around. You can tell by the items and the EV spreads, they put a fair amount of thought into prepping this team, with the Battle Bond Gren looking very capable of sweeping once Pokemaster's team is weakened. Although a setup Como could potentially do the same if Scorpion isn't careful. Let's not neglect the fact that Scorpion's hazard removal is preventing them from going up at all with his Magic Bounce Hatterene, so he has to be careful about that, as Scorpion leads Cleavor versus Wheezing Galar, choosing to U-turn out instead of going for the Stone Axe, expecting a switch. But you know, as a man who loves hazard myself, I would have done the same thing as Pokemaster here and get my T-Spikes up, as Scorpion makes the safe play of going Goodra on a potential poison attack. That one T-Spike is up for good, as Scorpion didn't bring Swallow and has no way to remove it. Pokemaster actually decides to switch hard into Iron Shreds. A bit of a risky play bringing in your hazard removal like this, especially versus a player like Scorpion, who is known for making these reads, as he does indeed go for the Fire Blast and connects with the Treads, knocking out in one hit. Definitely the momentum Scorpion needed after that initial setback with the T-Spike. Now he is free to get up his rocks and keep them up for later, but for now Como comes in to threaten it out. Scorpion makes the safe play, bringing in the Hat, as it is revealed to be a physical set with Drain Punch. Hat goes for Draining Kiss on the oncoming Chandelure, and then Goodra comes back in on a Hex from the Chandelure. That's a very threatening set on the Chandelure, by the way, as everything on his team will be able to take double from it, as Scorpion does have a Goodra that can take it no problem, except for the fact that Chandelure is able to Will-O-Wisp this thing to be able to still get the Hex off. Pokemaster might have burned it, but he can't stop this Goodra from simply going for a Draco afterwards and removing Chandelure from the game entirely. Although now with this, every Pokemon on Scorpion's side is going to be taking residual chips, so he does have to be careful about that. That being said, Scorpion is sitting pretty, up 2 Pokemon. That's very true, Tracy. Pokemaster goes back out into Como to threaten the Goodra with the same way, but Scorpion responds in kind by switching into Hatterene. Pokemaster doubles back into Booster Energy Iron Jugulus, who is Pokemaster's Terra Captain, and they're going to go ahead and Terra right here to reveal the Terra Steel Flash Cannon, but Scorpion activates his trap card with the Babiri Berry Hatterene, allowing him to live the hit and hit it back with a Mystical Fire to drop its attack. Babiri's a new one for me, I'm never going to forget that's the one for Steel now, but because of that poison chip, the Hatterene will not be able to take the next one. Scorpion decides this is the time to try to get Battle Bond Grin off, but Pokemaster is not going to allow that to happen. And once again, Como comes in and gets a bit of chip with Surf. Yeah, seems a bit too early for Battle Bond for me, but he might have been forcing the bluff on Pokemaster to force him to switch and lose the speed boost so Scarf Cleavor could outspeed it the next time. Either way, Scorpion is going to switch into Zamazenta on the Drain Punch, and then go for a Heavy Slam expecting the Wheezing. But Pokemaster chooses to stay in instead and go for the Dragon Tail in order to continue to spread poison to Scorpion's entire team. So even if his Hex strategy is out the window, it's still a great idea to spread poison that way. Indeed it is, as Scorpion brings out the Cleavor and U-turns out on the Wheezing, and actually brings in Torterra here. He goes for the Terrifier Shell Smash, but it was something far more sinister. A Haze, which is great prep on Pokemaster's part over Clear Smog, because it accounts for a Terra Steel on the Torterra, and a potential Acid Armor Body Press set on the Goodra Hisui. Scorpion decides to just go for a headlong rush here for damage as Pokemaster doubles down into Haze, which actually helps Scorpion out a little bit by resetting his defense drops. Torterra continues to headlong rush, this time into a Como, significantly weakening it, but because of the regular poison chip Torterra has already had at half HP, Torterra actually outspeeds the Como, which is based on its moves, likely a bulky EV spread. Iron Jugulus comes out here and Scorpion decides to sack off the Torterra to Earth Power, then safely bring in Zamazenta. That one T-Spike is continuing to eat away at Scorpion's team as he goes for the safe CC into Wheezing, into Heavy Slam to finally be able to take out that pesky Wheezing. Meowscarada comes out now and it reveals it is scarfed with a Flower Trick. Now that it's locked in, Scorpion realizes he can simply go Hisui and Goodra for the Fire Blast and not get crit due to its shell armor to finish the game. But the RNG has different plans for him as he misses the Fire Blast on the Goodra and then again on the Iron Jugular switch. Thankfully that Iron Shreds was taken out early as its Shuka Berry is still intact on an Earth Power from the Jugulus, but this Goodra had apparently one too many muddy waters and it misses the Fire Blast for a third time, which, you know, if you take 0.15 to the third power, multiply it by 100, that is a 0.3% chance, folks. Very unfortunate for Scorpion. You know, one school of thought might have been it might be better to simply knock off the Meowscarada in order to make sure you outspeed the Meow after a Battle Bond later. But on the other hand, if you land 2 Fire Blasts right here, you just win. So I understand that thought process too. Thankfully, Greninja can outspeed them here and simply knock them out with a Surf to get their Battle Bond. But the Meowscarada still has its Scarf and should always outspeed the Grenier if Pokemaster did their EVs correctly. Yeah, I might have Water Shuriken here for some chip personally, but either way, it really comes down to Cleavor can live the hit and revenge it, as Cleavor comes in to show off this nice little defense investment it had, in addition to its natural 95 base defense, to live the flower hit and knock out the Meowscarada in return with X-Scissor. Yeah, that was a nail biter. Both sides fighting for position. You'd love to see it. Pokemaster took advantage of Scorpion's lack of hazard control, but Scorpion's prep and playing ability put him in a position where the hacks in the end didn't lose him the game. We're on to round 4 here, with Season 1 champion Raymond, the Pokemon Scholar himself, going up against the leader of the Pokemon Battle Hub Draft League, Beardoo, aka Viridoo, aka Weirdoo, aka Clearadoo, aka Mixerdoo, from the Discord. They fought each other in the last week of the regular season previously. Although Beardoo was using a meme team with a Scarf Hippo, Beardoo is seeking to redeem himself and start the season strong. That may be true, but Raymond is still the Pokemon scholar, and he isn't playing around. He's got 2 powerful setup mons in Excalibur and Azumarill, 3 ground immunities, and a Trapper. This won't be easy for Garchomp to do too much. As predictable as Raymond's team is, you can't deny its power. Back in Season 1, I heard one of the previous coaches, Shaggy, say this: "You may know what this team is going to do. Question is, what the fuck are you going to do about it?" And I think that's the question everyone who faces the Mamoswine Doubters has to ask themselves when building. We're excited to see if Beardo can put in the work here with Brute Bonnet, as well as the Leaf Agent Malfunction, and the potential Mirror Herb Scizor that could be scary if played correctly. No surprise here, Beardo goes for the Universal Lead in Rotom, while Raymond chooses Azelf. Very reminiscent of Gen 4 DPP. Beardo switches into Screamtail as Azelf knocks off its lefties, already weakening it as a switch into Excalibur. Raymond immediately goes out into Azu as the Screamtail goes for rocks, absolutely essential in order to break any sashes or get chip damage on a non-boots Excalibur or Zapdos. Beardo actually decides to Baton Pass here. I would have loved the ability to Dry Pass in Smogon tiers, but at least we get to see it here, as he brings in the Scizor on a potential Belly Drum. But I think Raymond knew Belly Drum Azu might be a liability for Scizor, as he is in fact choice banned, and instead does 75% to the Scizor with a liquidation. Anticipated to switch, but the fact that this Azumarill is holding all the cards, he has no reason to switch. I would have gone for a Bullet Punch if I knew I wasn't running any speed on Scizor, because most banded Azus have at least some speed investment, and because of that, Azumarill is able to claim the first knockout on the Scizor without taking any damage in the process. Beardo's on the back foot here. He brings out Milotic to try and get a Scald Burn on the Azu, but fails. It does get its Flame Orb activated, though, to get the Marvel Scale, as Raymond brings out the Corv Defog. Beardo flip turns out into Chomp to try to get some chip with the Rough Skin, but Beardo is actually running a cool mix set with the Garchomp, as he tries to go for the Expert Belt Fire Blast, but fails to connect. Something about these Fire Blasts, they just can't connect this week. Azelf comes in here and goes for the Ice Punch on the switch to Screamtail. Nice tech making use of Azelf's physical attack of 125, same as its special attack. Screamtail is going to take the Baton Pass here from Momentum on the switch to Corv into the Rotom, as the Specs Volt switch comes out into the Zapdos, doing about half, revealing they are Specs as they're bringing Garchomp. The Zapdos is actually lefties here, so we see why Corv really wanted to defog. Zapdos protects on the Draco, but Beardo switches up to Poison Jab to try to catch the Azu. Raymond makes a safe mid-ground into Azelf on the jab, and does get poisoned. Raymond switches into Corv as Beardo goes Milotic, but this is a struggle for position here. Some rocks will be great for Beardo at this point. Milotic finally gets a Scald Burn on the Corv as the U-turn goes off, bringing in the Azu. Now that it's not locked into a water move, it can go for the Play Rough and do much more to Milotic, as Milotic goes for a Scald and finally gets the burn on Azumarill. Raymond brings in the Zapdos on the recover, as Zapdos retaliates with a raw Hurricane on the Screamtail switch, as Screamtail gets the rocks up on the Corv switch. Corv defogs the rocks, but Beardo manages to bait the Roost in order to lock it in with Encore, as Dugtrio comes in to trap the Screamtail on the Dazzling Gleam. Yeah, I think rocks might have been a bit better there personally. Yes, you break a potential sash, but the Corv is forced to switch out. It can't come in anymore without taking any chip. By the way, Screamtail is trapped here, and Dougie is easily going to revenge it with EQ. The Universal Lead Rotom comes out, as Raymond decides it's now the time, as he mementos on the Rotom, giving Excalibur the perfect opportunity to set up with a Sword Stance here, and because of its ability Thermal Exchange, the Rotom cannot Will-O-Wisp it. Milotic can try to come in with his Marvel skill, but because of the chip it's already taken, that will not be enough to survive this attack. Garchomp can try to come in and revenge it, but Excalibur proves why it is superior to almost every other pseudo one-on-one, as it has Ice-type priority and Ice Shard, and is easily able to take out the Garchomp. Stakes are looking dire here, as Brute Bonnet can try to come in and Terra Electric to not get hit by an Ice attack, but not even Sucker's going to do enough. The best you can hope for is to go for a Choke and Spore. But all Raymond has to do is flick Glaive Rush 2 more times, and that's GG's. Hard fought by both sides. That Fire Blast connecting on the Corv could have helped to at least get the rocks up, but that Excalibur is just so powerful after an SD, you really have to watch out to not let it set up, especially when you're dealing with an Arena Trap Dougie. Absolutely. The next game in the order of the dock is Lionel versus Icy Dude. Unfortunately, we don't have any footage from that game, but what we can tell you is that Chiyu and Electro Tsui went in getting 2 and 3 knockouts respectively, as the Volcarona ended up also getting 2 kills but was knocked out at a certain point, perhaps by a Scarf Chi-Yu or a Specs Electrode. The Conkeldurr did at least manage to knock out one Pokemon, probably the Tinglu, but overall the Never Dying Annihilape ended up beating the Blonde Conkeldurrs 3-0. That's right, and on for our next game, we are going to see the other Conkeldurr team going against none other than just Weavile. At Team Preview, it appears to be a very offensive type of game, with Almond bringing webs alongside 2 Moxie Sweepers, while Jack has the Big Six essentially, with the Darkrai and the Iron Bundle for fast offense, Lando Slowking for defense, and Furret and Heracross to help glue the team together. Furret is of course Jack's only way of removing hazards, but even without it, he has Boots on Darkrai and a Scarf on Bundle to negate webs either way. So starting off, it's going to be Furret versus Ribombee, as Ribombee is going to go straight for the Moonblast to prevent this Mon from tidying up later. Furret counters with a Body Slam. It's one of those rare moments where Shield Dust is actually pretty useful here, as Almond doesn't have to worry about being paralyzed from the Body Slam. Jack's going to try to save his Furret for later and go into Slowking Galar to tank a hit, as Almond goes for the Stun Spore mid-ground and manages to land. Almond doesn't have much else to do here besides go for webs and pray for the full para, but Jack manages to break through and takes out the Ribombee, meaning if he can get in the Furret later, he can remove the webs for the rest of the game. Almond brings in the Conkeldurr. Just kidding, it's actually the Girder. For those of you who don't know, there are 2 Conkeldurr teams in this league. Lionel actually picked round 1, leaving Almond high and dry, but not without a solid Vialimon, and he is going to knock off the Slowking's Black Sludge as he gets the safe Chili into Heracrim's. You know, it's a big coincidence that the day this battle was streamed by Almond, a top VGC player had his Gallade named Ceruledge, and it was banned from a tournament. Yet despite that, he managed to finish top 8, I believe, with only 5 Pokemon. But we'll let it slide for Almond in this case. Either way, Jack safely gets in his Guts Heracross, who ends up going for the Terra Fairy straight away, as Almond goes into his Golden Go, rightly assuming the Terra was something to hit the Girder. Golden Go is a huge threat, a big reason why this team is so scary, being able to set up hazards and block removal. Notably though, Jack has the only answer to good as gold in this entire game, being Tidy Up, as he makes the safe switch into Slowking Galar to tank a Make It Rain into -1 Shadow Ball, managing to hang on and Chili out. Not gonna lie, I got scared when I saw but it failed for the first time. But thankfully the game still lets you pivot out. Jack has broken through the paralysis several times now. That could have been a dangerous situation if he had, but he gets some regen and brings in the Darkrai to scare out the Golden Go. Almond knows he can bring in the Violet Conk in safely, however, and that Dark Pulse does almost nothing to this thing. But chip is chip, there's no denying that. At this point, Jack knows another knockoff is likely coming here, so rather than losing one of his items on his key Pokemon, he decides to make the Furret sack on the Terra Dark reveal, which, although webs are up for good now, because of the items on his offensive Pokemon, it actually won't make that much of a difference unless Almond managed to set up one of his other Pokemon with some speed. Now that he's revealed the Terra, he is still weak to Terra Blast Fairy Heracross, which is now going to go for a knockoff this time and either remove the Eviolite or something else's item. And in this case, it takes off the Boots from the Rotom Heat, which is huge for this game because if he can get at those rocks, he can only bring in Rotom Heat one more time safely before dying to rocks. Glowking comes out to tank the overheat, taking 60 points of damage and having 33 remaining. So unless we had a min into a max roll, they can live another, as Almond Volt switches out into the Girder, allowing the Slowking to continue to break through Para, as it gets a slack off to get more HP, then gets the regen into the Landorus as the Girder knocks off the Rocky Helmet, which could be big for Salamence or Quaquaval later. Jack knows the Lando could be set up fodder for Mence, so he makes the safe long-term play to U-turn out on the Mence into the switch to Scarf Bundle, forcing the Mence to switch into Girder, who continues to be chipped by a Freeze Dry. Jack makes the safe switch into Heracross, this time on yet another knockoff. But I think Heracross, it couldn't care less about that Flame Orb at this point. Rotom Heat comes in to save as a sack to take the knockoff, manages to hang on but is below the Throx threshold, giving Jack an extra incentive to get up those rocks and remove a potential sack for Almond later in the game. We've got another Overheat Volt Switch cycle here as Glowking continues to just be ignored To just ignore being paralyzed, chilly receptioning on the Mence into Darkrai, goes for the Ice Beam on the Girder, switch getting it closer and closer to being in range of an attack from Darkrai. It's not quite Darkrai's time yet though, as we continue this cycle into Lando taking a Drain Punch, allowing the free turn to get up rocks. Well, you know what they say. There's no such thing as free rocks, as now Salamence is given the opportunity to get up a Dragon Dance in front of this Lando's face. Although it does have to take an enormous amount of damage from the Stone Edge, it can roost it off and lose the Flying type. Lando actually misses the Stone Edge anyways. This Salamence is looking pretty good, but unfortunately Almond feels threatened in this situation and decides to switch out to Golden Go. That could have been real bad if Jack went for EQ there expecting the roost, and he just took out the Golden Go instead. I think if Almond could have tried to roost up and DD'd there again, or even just attack to weaken the Lando for Quackable to start boosting, either way, Jack decides to bring in the Slowking to tank hit from the Golden Go, except it's actually a crit into a Spadef drop with the Shadow Ball. This Slowking has been living on borrowed time, escaping all those full paras. I think its Hack's Karma finally came due here, as now another Shadow Ball takes out the Slowking. But it's not that big a deal though, because like we've been saying, this Girder has been the only thing standing in the way of Darkrai, and it has been getting chipped the entire game, and now it's about to take some Rocks chip as the Darkrai manages to nasty block. Girder isn't going down without a fight though, as Mach Punch does almost half, but a +2 Ice Beam can easily take out the Girder. Quackable comes in hoping this Darkrai won't have Psychic, but this is Draft, so this Darkrai is going to be prepared as it takes out the Quackable. Golden Go comes in next, but this Dark Pulse is at +2 and it's easily going to take out the Golden Go, as well as the Salamence with Ice Beam. Rotom Heat's the last mon standing for Almond's side, but because of those rocks being set up earlier, it is simply going to faint upon switching here, as that is the game. Very well played by both sides. Would have loved to see some follow through on the Salamence. I think that could have brought it so much closer for Almond, depending on misses or crits from Stone Edge. Either way, great game. Absolutely. We're coming to the end of the road here, Foxy, as now we have Emerald Miner versus the notorious HIM. A very exciting match for YouTube audiences who have never seen them go head-to-head on camera. Emerald notably has no Terra Captains at Team Preview, but he does have Iron Valiant plus Pincurchin, along with his bulky walls Heatran and Mandibuzz. That's why on HIM side we see big threats like Dragapult and Fernape, rounded out with a Clefable and Alolan Muck defensive core. He has several Pokemon whose primary weakness is ground, but he doesn't mind that, as Emerald's only form of ground stab is Toedscruel. For the lead matchup, we see Mandibuzz versus Infernape, as HIM U-turns out into Alolan Muck, taking some helmet chip as Emerald gets his rocks up with Heatran. Emerald loves his hazards. This Alolan Muck goes for a knock and return, doing about a third and removing Heatran's lefties for later. I hope those rocks were worth it. Toedscruel comes out as Alolan Muck goes for the Drain Punch, then a knockoff onto the Spore, proccing the Poison Touch. Alolan Muck is put to sleep here as Emerald burns the first turn to remove Muck's passive recovery, as he now goes Pincurchin to get up the terrain for Iron Valiant, as the Alolan Muck is still asleep. Pincurchin gets up a spike as Muck finally wakes up to go for the knockoff to remove the terrain extender, as Emerald gets up 2 layers of spikes. A bit of a waste if you think about it, because it's only 6% more damage. I think Wild Charge chip this Muck would have been better. Would have done over half of this thing in the terrain. Indeed, I think Emerald flew a bit too close to the sun here, as he is just begging HIM to have his Sand Slash come in and Rapid Spin all that hard work away, as that's exactly what ends up happening. Although now Emerald switches into Toedscruel to reserve his terrain setter for later. We see a big Earth Power go off on the Sand Slash, but not before it Rapid Spins away all those hazards, taking out the Toedscruel after the poison. Now that Earth Power did quite a lot. Keep in mind that Sand Slash only has 55 base special defense. Its physical defense, however, is 110. Huge difference as Emerald sends in the Iron Valiant to put in work. Although remember, the Clef is still at 100%, it can tank any hit. Him is going to stand their ground in the face of an Iron Valiant in terrain, however, as they Terra Fairy in case they go for the CC, and also to do a lot of damage with Terra Blast. Emerald goes for the Spirit Break instead, as Sand Slash actually lives on 1 HP and OHKOs the Iron Valiant in return with a Terra Blast. Huge moment in the battle here. This was a low roll, however, as Spirit Break does about 47 to 57. Either way, Iron Valiant was his main sweeper and is now gone in an instant. Emerald decides to go Ogerpon, which actually outspeeds the Sand Slash and takes it out. They probably should have gone out into it first, but Sand Slash is taken out by the Trailblaze, leaving the Ogerpon in a decent position. It would be, except for the fact that Magnezone comes out now. Would have been a great time to have Stomping Tantrum at this point, except Emerald doesn't have it on this set and instead go for a knockoff on a potential Specs, expecting to live the hit. HIM goes for a big discharge in terrain, doing massive damage to this Ogerpon. HIM is looking great here. He is free to go for another discharge into the Heatran and actually gets the para off on this Bidef Heatran as he switches into a Alolan Muck on the full para on the Heatran, dodging an Earth Power, but let's be honest here, probably would have eaten that hit anyways. Emerald tries to get some momentum back by going into Mandibuzz on the Drain Punch to get some Helmet Chip, as we see the U-turn into Pincurchin, which at this point benefits no one except for the Magnezone, and simply dies to a Poison Jab into a knockoff. This does at least allow him to get in the Heatran and Earth Power at this point, but it only does about 30%. And it had to get Drain Punched in order to do it. Stakes are dire, as Emerald only hope is to set up with the Ogerpon, and it goes for an Ivy Cudgel on the Clef Switch, doing about 45%. Emerald is actually meant to SD here, but he clicked Ivy Cudgel too fast, and it actually saved him, because it meant that he got damage off for the Wish, as he's able to SD on the Protect, completely neglecting the fact that it can be unaware. Even if it is, though, it is still good to be at +2 after you knock out the Clef, as Ogerpon goes for an Ivy Cudgel, barely missing out on the KO, although with its HP investment, it is able to tank the Moonblast, allowing him to get a Trailblaze and get up to +1 speed, +2 attack. Unfortunately, though, this thing has already taken way too much chip damage, as a Mach Punch is easily going to be able to tank it out. Emerald goes for the switch into Mandibuzz to get some Helmet Chip. That just allows HIM to safely get out into their Magnezone on the Mandibuzz Roost and get off a huge discharge on this Mandibuzz on the U-turn. Ogerpon is at least able to save some face here for the Force, turning a 5-0 loss into a 3-0 loss by taking out the Magnezone, where Dragapult is now able to come in and clean up with a couple of Dragon Darts, and that is going to be the game. Huge win for Notorious HIM, using two of Emerald's best Pokemon from Season 1 against him.
Him played that game very well, very safe. I think overall, him had the superior prep in this case, and we're excited to see what happens in Week 2 from them. As with all the other coaches, this week was absolutely incredible. Lots of big matches. And we can't wait to see what happens in Week 2. We've got a lot of big matches like the Battle of the Conkelders. We've got the Notorious HIM versus Captain Beanard rematch. We've also got Emerald Miner versus Just Weavile. Can't wait to see what happens. So be sure to tune in next time, and also be sure to check out all the channels down below for the coaches and see what happens in the games as they come out. Until then, we'll see you guys next time.